Wish you were one of those influencers with raving fans who binge on your every word, consume all your content, buy everything you have to sell, and demand even more? Then stay tuned while Authority Magazine columnist and BuzzFeed contributor Tracy Hazzard shares strategies, tips, and tactics from top videocasters, podcasters, authors, and social influencers on creating that bingeable factor. Now, let's join Tracy as she explores how to rise above all the digital noise with the binge factor.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Binge Factor. I'm Tracy Hazzard, and I am bringing you another manufacturing guy, a really interesting niche down podcast, but this one's a little bit, I don't know, I'm going to say playful. That's the words I want to use for it. Really, really playful. So we've got Jake Harrell here, and Jake is the host of a quality podcast. I mean, it's just great. Like, he's also known as the funniest lean guy. And, you know, funniest lean guy, that sounded really weird. And when I was giving him an introduction, I was like, okay, I'm going to look this up. And he said to look him up on LinkedIn. He's the funniest lean guy on LinkedIn. And so I very quickly realized as I was looking this out, I thought it was just going to be some comedian or something that I was going to be interviewing here. And it turns out he's a lean manufacturing expert and a guy, an engineer who likes to talk engineering. And, you know, it's just one of those kind of funny models of people who really benefit from having this kind of title going along with them, because there's so many out there in the marketplace, and he's set himself apart as the funniest lean guy. So here's what he says about himself, which I think was really funny in and of itself. So I wanted to set you up with that. He says, if you're reading this, most likely I know what you're thinking. Some variety of the following. Funniest lean guy? Huh? The Lady Gaga of lean? Excuse me. Well, let me try and share some perspective on why the brand, the man, and the method exists in the first place. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I constantly look for ways to relate to people. Well, one thing almost everybody loves is a good laugh. As I continue to journey toward putting lean into the world, I had a crazy thought. Why not connect the two? So this is what he wrote to me. You can see why I had to have him on the show, right? This is really a position of someone who knows who they are. And when you know who you are and you're putting that out in the world, your podcast is going to be good. And there's really got to be something for that. So he does a quality podcast with his best buddy. And it's kind of an interesting dynamic between the two of them. So I totally want you to hear more about it. But not just that, I wanted to let you know that he has started a podcast that is a buddy show. But it's a buddy show with a really niche down specific topic. And that's making all the difference as to why this show is really bingeable here and not just some general talk show, general buddy show that's just sort of like you're vicariously looking in on it. This show has interesting things you can learn. It has debate, it has discussion, and it definitely brings the funniest lean guy. Jake, thanks for joining me. It seems our paths have crossed a couple of times. We have Rena in common, who I absolutely love, Better Call Daddy, and Felipe. I mean, you know, I didn't know when Rena introduced us that I was going to be talking to another engineering manufacturing guy. We're going to talk, I mean, you talk lean manufacturing, and I'm very sure that we're not going to really talk lean manufacturing on this show. But I love that that's the impetus for the conversation in your show. What made you and your co-host, John, start the show?
Well, he is my BFF, right? And in another life, I would have married him, but that's not how life worked out. My wife told me no. And in 2019, he moved halfway across the country. And the last day he was here, he showed up at my house with one of those little stands you could put your phone on. It's like, we're going to record right on your couch. And this is going to be our excuse to stay in touch. And ever since then, we've used it for exactly that. It's more about us and who we bring on. Sometimes you'll hear us like attacking each other, having more fun back and forth than even who we bring on. And it was a great way for us to act like we're just at a bar, getting to know people casually, but on camera for the world.
I love that. I think that's such a great personal reason, but you're still putting really great information and interesting things out in the world.
I find some way to weave it both in. I call it, what did he refer to it? Edutainment. Right?
Edutainment. That's right.
We want you to learn something, but still laugh the whole way.
So you're known as the funniest lean guy. which is pretty interesting. So I'm like, I'm looking that up on YouTube, and you end up with like some odd combinations of things, let me tell you. So it takes a little while to find you, Jake, there. But when I type that into LinkedIn, no problem. I find it and you're just all set there. But but on YouTube, not so much. It's a little dicey out there.
Yeah, YouTube is pretty fresh for us. And, I don't know what I'm doing, right? I didn't know what I was doing on LinkedIn. And it just happened to blow up and go that route. But LinkedIn is very serious, and I'm very not in most of my content. So I'm slowly taking over that world.
Well, in case the audience doesn't know, let's at least define lean manufacturing.
Oh, I forget, your audience isn't full of industrial engineers.
That's right. It's not. I have a bit of an industrial design background, so it's not like it's a term I haven't heard before. I worked for Malcolm Baldrige award-winning companies, so we've been through Six Sigma. But I think those terms, all of that right there, it's that gobbledygook that I was talking with Felipe, our engineering guy, and a couple of weeks ago, and he was throwing out 3-letter words, 3-letter acronyms left and right. So define lean for us.
I definitely got to define Felipe as well. But lean is a set of tools, topics, and philosophies that act as a cohesive approach to how you can engage all stakeholders within a business. That's your customers, that's your employees, that's your board, all at once, and sort of focus on growing that pie rather than taking a bigger slice of that pie for yourself.
So everybody wins in that process.
You are trying to engineer a win-win-win environment. And ironically, where I met Felipe, which we're also BFFs, by the way, if you weren't aware.
I wasn't aware of that because we were introduced differently.
Yes, we definitely are. And we get on LinkedIn Lives now. Every handful of weeks we're on LinkedIn Live. And our relationship started with us starting a chat on LinkedIn and arguing with one another about a couple of these TLAs, if you will. We had completely opposite views and just, you son of a, this is not how this works. And
I love it. Engineering throwdown.
Yes. And so we decided to do the nerdiest thing, and that was hold a debate on a LinkedIn Live. And we did the debate. And while we were doing it, we had more fun just like riffing off of it together and on camera than we even did like pursuing our point or whatever. And we've managed to find a middle ground and a place we could agree. And that spurned a series we call Change Makers, in which we pick highly debated topics and we make it fun. Like we'll attack one another. I'll tell you, your hair looks dumb. And then we'll dive into who agrees with what, who disagrees, and get the audience engaged. So a whole lot of fun.
I love that. I love it, love it, love it. So you've actually been doing a lot of lives. I want to dive into that. So are you doing the podcast, a quality podcast live, or just something different when you do it? You're just doing the Change Makers live?
Right now, we did the Change Makers live for about 6 episodes thus far. Prior to that, I was a little all over the place as I was just joining the live world. So I bring on notable people like Mark Graben, Bob Miliani, anybody who's dumb enough to say yes to old Jake. And we'll do a LinkedIn Live about what they want the focus to be, because I got a pretty good audience reach in the space, and just sort of learn in PDCA as we move forward. And then that is live only. And a quality podcast, we record one every week and it's fully edited. Takes away all the offensive stuff I say that's not allowed to make it out in the camera, and then comes out every weekend.
I love it. I love it. What have you learned doing the lives versus doing the recorded?
And the number one lesson, if I was just going to pick one, a little who-saw, I constantly get asked, like, where did you learn public speaking? And you want to know where I learned that, like really learn that? Yeah. By doing it really terribly here 100 times. That is where I learned it, right? Like we hopped on before you hit record. And you're like, you need to change that setting on your mic. Like immediately, the first thing is there's something I can learn, something I'm going to get better, something I'm going to adjust and figure out. I mean, if you hear the first one, I'm talking to my mic. Like
it was like
it's bad, right? And that part of me was like, I want to delete it. But the other part's like, no, I want people to have the courage to hit that record button and get their stuff out into the world and figure out PDCA from there, right? So one day we can all be the Tracy Hazzards of the world.
Well, you know what? Hey, continuous improvement is a part of your model of business.
It is. It's a great way to leave all your mistakes on the table, right?
That's right. You're like, I'm going to give myself permission to continually improve instead of having to be perfect from day one, right? And, your audience is forgiving. That's the great part about it. If they find you and they start listening, they'll keep going for a while. If it doesn't improve, they get upset, right?
They send you messages. Have you started getting reach out from your audience?
I do all the time, especially now that I'm putting myself. If you said even before we hit record, you can find me on other podcasts more so than you even find out. And on every one of them, somebody said, "Hey, you should do this. Hey, you should consider this. Hey, buy these lights. Buy this thing in the background." And I don't know what I'm doing. I know I don't look like it at all, but I am a hillbilly country boy from the middle of nowhere, right? I wouldn't own a camera before this. So, everything I can learn is great.
Yeah, it's working out for you. Your camera's great. For those of you who are just listening, Jake's got a great camera going on. So, we've got really clear picture here, which is good for YouTube and good for LinkedIn Live. What have you learned from the LinkedIn Lives, though? You said before when we were talking that you're headed into that 10,000 follower mark, which is a really big deal. Right. A lot of people get stuck around 5,000. That's kind of their thing. And then that next level of 10,000 is really hard to achieve. What do you think you've been doing that's working for you there?
Well, it's going to come to a surprise to people who are sitting at home, but you actually have to put in a lot of effort.
Whoa, you have to do some work?
It's not like, oh, well, I just said the right funny thing and now there's 10,000 people following me. No, it actually takes effort. So 3-phased approach, I engage with everybody in my feed. I'm constantly cleaning up my feed. So if you don't podcast or if you don't lean, then generally I'm not going to meet you because that's what my 2 groups are. And if you are in that group, I'm going to engage with everything you do. I'm going to get notified. So LinkedIn tells me when you put out what you do, and I'm going to do whatever I can to create value for you. Because if I do that, you're not going to hesitate to create value for me, right?
That's right. I love that you're engaging and you're being focused about that audience, because too often people just want to hit that 10,000 mark and they're not discerning at all.
Yeah, I want my people, right? Why would I care if I've got 10,000 people that don't engage with what we do? It's done really well. It's nerdy. And if you look at my stats, relatively small in the podcast, we probably have 100 people that consistently engage with everything. Everyone who's come on the show, they're now in this tight circle where we text each other outside of LinkedIn, or we'll DM, or what are your thoughts about this? And we'll jump into different things. And I really have a nice little community growing of nerdy people who also want to laugh.
I love it. That's so great that you have exactly the tribe you're looking for. So you said you're kind of a novice over on YouTube, but you've been posting everything over to YouTube. What have you found is so difficult over there to navigate?
Well, I guess there's a little bit of an impasse where when I started LinkedIn without any indeliverable. I'm not I'm trying to hit 10,000 and trying to get 1 million people to see me. I'm trying to sell you my business. None of that. So I just got to be funny and me from the get-go and really build people that just wanted to know Jake or be around Jake or me be around them, et cetera, et cetera. Well, then on YouTube, when we flipped over to that, we really weren't reaching out for anybody. We recorded because it's something we enjoyed. So we didn't care if one person didn't see it. Who cares? It was my hour with John for me to do whatever we're going to do. Sometimes I'll just attack him for his clothing, or I'll call him old, or whatever the argument ends up being about. It was for us more than it was for the world. As it's gone on, now we're okay, this does need to be a thing for a world. We need to change our approach a little bit and put a little more effort into that outreach.
Well, yeah. See, reality is that you're right. You made that distinction over there. YouTube's all about selling. It's about selling something, whether it's influence or hawking the products, making money off of ads. And so if you're not selling something, it's really hard to be over on YouTube. It just doesn't have that same kind of nurturing community environment. And it's not so easy to get commenting going and engagement happening. People more passively watch over on YouTube instead. But, hopefully people are going to find your show and then come listen to the podcast or come find you on LinkedIn from it. So at least there's that.
Yeah, and the one person on earth that's waiting out there's where can I get a funny guy that's also talking about engineering? And they're going to stumble across me, and we're going to be in our nice, tight little community. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, you're speaking engagement. It's going to get you some speaking engagement. Works for Felipe all the time, right?
Yeah, we do end up booking quite a bit. If I'll go speak for a class, I'll go do a team building, I'll go do something motivational, or I'll just go have fun. I actually got into almost as much comedy stuff, which I wasn't really focused on comedy. I was just trying to make the engineering stuff less boring than it is. So that's why we did what we did, but it's kind of worked both ways. So I'm not going to complain.
That's really good. So let's talk a little bit about the things that we always talk here on the Binge Factor about, and that is, engaging and getting listeners, and all of these sort of three questions that I ask everybody. So the first thing is about great guests, and you have some interesting guests on that nobody's ever heard of in outside of the lean world, I'm assuming, but within your world, I'm assuming they're at least somewhat recognizable, or at least the topic that they're talking about is. But how do you choose a guest? How do you bring guests on, and are you doing that, or is John doing the heavy lifting?
Well, that is a really fun part about our small, tiny little community is we don't do a whole lot of outreach. Like the inbound lead is more than sufficient for the people. I mean, the weird, like 3-layered small segment of people who are lean and want to talk and are funny and are consulting or some such are a really small niche for me. But they managed to find me. Like right now, we've got the next 90 days booked with people we're going to either bring back or bring on. And then as well, I've got a relationship with just about the biggest players in the space. So like our most hard-hitting episode of late, Mark Graban. You may or may not know that gentleman. He is the biggest name in healthcare continuous improvement in the country. Like it does not get bigger than Marky Grabs. Like he is somebody I have looked up to for a decade, and I managed to get him on the show. So I fanboyed the entire time. If you couldn't tell what I was up to, if you ever give it a listen, I fanboyed the entire episode.
I love it. I love it. Love it. So that's so much fun that you're getting to find a guest that you just want to hear from, that you want to ask questions of, because it makes more engaging content at the end of the day. And then from that though, you have to be thinking about increasing listeners in some way, shape, or form. I mean, you have a tribe, but you still want a bigger one. How do you do that? Do you do any outreach? Do you ask your audience?
Well, today, I'm very grateful that the LinkedIn reach has grown. Like my run rate for this year is like 1.5 million impressions. So there's going to be people that see me on LinkedIn and interact. So I make it a point that once a day, I hop on LinkedIn. I look by Lean Six Sigma. In the new people I haven't connected with, I try to connect to 5 of them anyways. It's personal outreach. Hi, how you doing? Here's what I'm up to. Love to have you in the circle, what have you. But then when I post, I make sure I add all the value I can to everybody that engages and interacts. And then I scroll through my feed and say I got 100 comments today. I'll make it a point. If I got 100 comments, I'm going to go comment at least 100 times on people's stuff. And I will scroll through and spend, whether it's 30 minutes or 2 hours, depending on how good my stuff did. I'm going to give exactly that much back to the community or more to let me interact with what you're doing. And then since my brand is funny and very specific, people are generally out there posting meaningful things about said topic. And I'll take exactly what they're posting about, agree with their principle, their direction, but make it funny and work it into a post and include them. And people love that. People love that level of thoughtfulness put into what it is we're doing. And it's been great.
This is such a good point that you point out. I want the audience to hear this. So what you're saying is that you're consistently posting on LinkedIn on a daily basis, which really makes a difference right there, right there. That's a part of a formula. It's no different than what I say here on podcasting is if you're consistent and constant about it, you're going to be better off. So that's working for you. Then you have the engagement piece. So first off, you have engaged audience who's already making comments to begin with, which is really important because if you have an audience that, as you pointed out, are not that engaged, don't care, then they're not going to comment. You don't have nothing to work with, right? Mm-hmm. So you've got something to work with, but then you're actually working it. So by commenting back and forth, by liking it, by resharing this information, you're creating the exact environment that LinkedIn wants to reward. And that's why you're hitting that 1.5 million impressions, right? Like that's where you're getting that from, is because you're doing exactly what LinkedIn wants you to do. You're staying within the platform and you're following all the steps of the things that they love, because what does it do? Create a better LinkedIn environment. Mm-hmm. And it creates a better environment for you. And it creates a better environment for that followers and that audience for you. You built that win-win-win, that exact thing that you're always talking about. You built that right in the LinkedIn process already.
And I can't reiterate enough for the audience that the outbound side, we reach out to people you don't know, like be consistent and diligent with it. The only way you're ever going to expand beyond your inner circle is if you interact with people you don't know, right? If you spent your life interacting with people you know, you wouldn't be where you are.
That's right. So you get to have your co-host best friend, and then you get to go explore everybody else. I love it.
Yeah. And then if I'm if I'm drunk on video, or if I'm shooting or saying something I shouldn't, I get to be me, right? I don't have to have a brand that's me posturing something that I'm not, to wear a suit and act fancy on LinkedIn. No, I just get to be me, which is the coolest part of all of it.
So the last question that I usually ask everybody on this piece of it is about monetization, but you've already said that you really aren't doing the show for that purpose. But it sounds to me like some things have come your way, like speaking engagements and other things. It sounds to me like monetization's actually come to you anyway.
Well, I started with picking an agenda this year, right? I was like, I do actually need an agenda and don't spuriously go into the world. And mine is, I want you to Google Jake Harrell lean and the entire first page be me. I don't care if it's an episode. I don't care if it's me. I don't care if it's me speaking at another thing. That was my goal for this year. And so that's what I've set out to do one way or another. I don't care if it was paid, unpaid, whatever. The world is going to know Jake one way or the other.
And what are you going to do with that?
That's going to be next year's topic of how do I capitalize on that appropriately?
I've already set your resolution for next year is to figure that out. Right. I love it, Jake. That's so fun. So, well, here's the thing. So I usually analyze everyone's binge factor at some point in the show. I'm going to do yours and John's now, because obviously it's John's show too, a quality podcast. Here's the thing that's so different about your show, which is really what I think creates that bingeable factor for you, is that the topic is not something you necessarily think you're going to want to listen to for an hour. But because you have the interplay of three of you, of your guest and the two of you going on, and you have this, you feel like you're in mid-conversation, like you're getting let in to the inside jokes. And you're still laughing, even though you don't feel like you're that outsider in the inside joke world. You're laughing because, Jake, you bring the funny to it. You bring that in, and you really do. I don't know if you're as conscious of it as the effect of it, but you are actually bringing in your audience. You don't say that out to them. You really feel like you're talking within the conversation, but somewhere you're conscious of the fact that someone's listening. And you bring them into the fold. You bring them in on the joke. You bring them in on the topic. And that round of bringing them in makes them want to come back for more because they feel like they belong.
That's the dream there. So thank you very much for saying that out loud.
Oh, there you go. Oh, just get choked up there. I love it. There are so many things about podcasting that people find daunting, which you got an engineering background. I don't think too much of it could have been overwhelming, but was there any part of it that made you feel, like daunted, uncomfortable?
Oh, you want to know the best part? Like the best part of all of it is in the uncomfort zone is that I'm not doing any of the editing, the posting, the management. As some of the key things you've mentioned that, we need to PDCA around. My best friend, co-host, John Thacker is doing all of that. And it's really hard to have something that I'm a part of that I don't touch and feel and micromanage and beat to death with what I want to do.
So it's hard to let go.
Yes.
So how come you're not job splitting here?
You don't say that out loud. John's going to listen to this. I am very grateful.
John's like, I'm happy to hand over the work. And Jake's like, nope, I'm good. I love it. Yeah. But you know what? That's so true. It's like, you do have to let go of it when you're not responsible for it. I mean, I obviously have a whole editing team because that's what Podfaded is. So we have a whole editing company. And at some point I had to let go, but there's some things that you don't want to let go of. What don't you want to let go of? What do you want to make sure that you're always a part of?
We do to discuss back and forth before the show goes out. My favorite part of every weekend is we have a post-show phone call where we'll just talk about 100 things. And there's always something I feel, maybe I'm wrong, maybe the audience has a different opinion, that was like either too dry or I rambled on too long about, and I'm like, cut minute 14 out of this. And every time we get on a call, there's one of them, and I know exactly where it is. And I'm like, get rid of this, get this out of here. And I don't know that if somebody else was editing the show, they would necessarily catch what I don't like about myself in the way that I talk or present or what I went over.
No, that's so true. It's like, I have all these clients who, if they really listen to their show, they cut way more than our editors do. And so, because, you can't know if this is important or not, if that's just you being you, and it's part of the charm of the show. But I think we're our hardest editors. We really are. And
We are.
probably,
we are.
yeah, we're too big a critic of our own of our own stuff that actually our audience probably really likes. You don't know.
Well, in 2020, I was nowhere on LinkedIn, right? A couple of hundred followers before I took off doing what I was doing. And I had a couple of big problems. Two of my biggest problems, I was afraid to put exactly what I thought out because of fear of retribution. And then number two, I really genuinely hate being on camera. Hate it to this day. And then I just set out, well, Jake's got to get out of his comfort zone. He's got to get uncomfortable if he wants a chance to do any of this. And I put myself on camera every stinking week for the last, 2 years just to get it out there.
I love it. I love it. That's so brave of all of you, right? Of John too. I love that John came up with this idea. Yeah, you've thrown out an acronym multiple times, PDCA. What does that mean? Because I'm now going to get my audience saying, define this for me.
Plan, do, check, act. It's the basic scientific process.
Thank you. Plan, do, check, act. So I'm assuming that you had a plan that you do, check, and act every time you sit down to record. Do you guys have a protocol that you do? Do you have a checklist system, or do you just we're winging it, we're going all for it?
So when you book on the show through the Calendly link, you get a couple of questions. What's the central theme? Is there anything you want to promote? But that's pretty much it. The central theme, what do you want to promote? When we connect on before we hit record, we tell you it's fully edited. So you fart, burp, laugh, say something you don't want out in the world, let us know, we can remove it. And we hit record and we make it a regular conversation. Some of them suck. Some of them are great. All of them have me in it. Take it as you will.
I love it. So there is a plan, but it happens all pre-show starting. I love it. Mm-hmm. Make it super simple. Well, what advice do you have for other people out there who are sitting on the fence, not really getting off of it and starting their podcast?
Hit record. I mean, if you think that it's too bad or the quality's not going to be there, I encourage you. I'll send Tracy a link we can share. Watch my first episode, right? It's just my chunky butt on my couch at home. There's nothing special about anything. I'm way too nervous. I'm not myself. I'm just like, well, one of the things we're talking about here is something I would never do in my own living room, right? And just hit record. You can't get past those until you actually do it, right?
That's absolutely right. Thank you so much, Jake. I really appreciate you coming on the show. I look forward to checking out everything that you have on LinkedIn, because now I need to go deeper dive into it. I mean, I found you on LinkedIn. We've been connected for a week or two now, and I got to dive deeper into what you're doing over there. So I'm definitely going to check that out. Is there any place else that we should check you out besides YouTube and LinkedIn?
If you just click on my LinkedIn, and I'll also share it here. I share a social media link from Linktree that's got everything I do touch, feel, and am a part of.
Well, we'll make sure that's in the blog post for this episode at thebingefactor.com so everyone can find you. And so we can, what I'm going to recommend to the audience here is do Jake a favor. Google him first. Instead of clicking through the link, Google him and see what happens.
Put the word lean at the end of it.
Yeah,
Jake
put
Harrell
the word
lean.
Jake Harrell lean, and let's see what happens. And let's see how he's doing. Let's check on him, because you never know when people might be listening to this episode. Could be a year from now, and see if he achieved his goal.
Yeah, there's a singer that his name is Jacob Harrell. He's a rap artist, and then so when you search Jake Harrell, you get him. So I'm like, I'm not going to be a rap artist anytime soon, but it's gonna happen. I have to do it at some point.
That is so funny that you say that, because there's another Tracy Hazzard with Tuesdays, just like me. And I beat her on Spotify now.
Okay. And she does.
So you do enough episodes of podcast and you'll beat them even where they should play, right? You think you should never beat a rap artist on Spotify, but once you do, now you know you made it.
I'm taking them down. I'm coming for you.
That's it. Good. Jacob Harrell, watch out. Well, Jake, thanks so much for joining us today. A quality podcast airs every week, and Jake Harrell and John Thacker. And it is a interesting show if you're interested in lean manufacturing, but it is a more interesting show to go check out the dynamic of how things work over there.
Thank you very much for that.
So I told you it was going to be fun and funny. We had a lot of energy, and you can see how exciting Jake is and how much it really goes to play with how he's able to connect and communicate with just about anyone. So whether you're seeing him engage on his show with his co-host, or you're having him engage here with me as a guest on my show, or he's engaging on LinkedIn in the commenting and in his LinkedIn lives,
he's engaging with people. And while he's doing that in a fun and funny way, it's not out of reach for all of you too, right? We don't have to be stand-up comedians to have fun. And that's a big difference. So I want you to learn from that. So go check out A Quality Podcast, see how it is. Definitely listen to some of the more recent episodes because they're a little rough in the beginning. But if you want to see that contrast of growth, check out one of his first shows and then check out one in the end, right? And really see that contrast between how he's going. You know, I really love the growth model. I love that he was so eager to learn. Not just that, but before the call, before the interview, we were getting his microphone dialed in, and he's an engineer, right? And we were getting it dialed in because his environment wasn't ideal for the microphone type that he had. So we were trying to remove some more echo from the environment. And then afterwards, we were talking about some things that they might do better on their show. And that just being open to that learning is what approaching here, my show, and approaching podcasting as a continual learning and continuous improvement process, which Jake knows really well because that's what lean manufacturing is all about, right? Continuous improvement, continually changing, collaboration, making all of those things work. So when he's collaborating with me and improving his show, it's going to benefit more and more people as it goes forward. So that's what I want for you here. Be open. Come try an audit. Go and get your podcast audited through our system. We can put the link for that, podetize.com/audit. It's super easy. You can go there and to Podetize and get an audit of your show. But come here and really be open to the ideas that you're hearing on each show. How might you change things? What might you fix? What might you adjust that is going to make your show that much better? And don't take it on all at once. Don't take it as criticism and critique of where you are. Take it as input. Because when you take it as input and then you roll it into something you're going to improve on, you're going to just be improving yourself, improving your show, and making a win-win-win for everyone involved, just like Jake Harrell recommends in A Quality Podcast. So thanks everyone for listening to me today and listening to Jake's ideas and his advice. I love that you're showing up week after week because I can see it because we are getting you as binge listeners. And I really appreciate that. So if there's anything we can do for you, any topic we can cover, any type of podcast we haven't reached out to yet, reach out to us and let us know. Engage with us anywhere you would like to, on social media, on our rate and review, on our website, go anywhere because you can reach us in all of those places at thebingefactor.com. Especially, you can find out where all those places are, but reach out to us and let us know what you're looking for because I want to be here for you and I want to make this the biggest win for you and your show possible. And if you don't have a show yet, get going, get recording. Looking forward to seeing you on the podcast listings in the future. Thanks everyone for listening. I'm Tracy Hazzard and I'll be back next week with another podcaster for us to learn from on the Binge Factor.
You've been listening to the Binge Factor podcast. For more information on podcasting and videocasting success tips and tactics, please go to thebingefactor.com. And be sure to listen to our other show for podcasters called Feed Your Brand. If you'd like to be interviewed on this show, as well as featured in Tracy's column, please go to thebingefactor.com/guest and apply.